Hello and welcome to the Kenneth for Law Office Legal Podcast, the NJ Laws Tube, looking at recent cases and statutes dealing with criminal law. In this edition, we look at what's called resisting arrest, where there's flight that is alleged. Flight means running away from the police. That's an indictable charge heard in the Superior Court. And at the end of the trial, the judge is required to read what's called jury charges. And one of the jury charges is based on the statute 2C, colon 29-2A. And the judge reads what is called these jury charges and basically states the indictment charges the defendant with committing the crime of resisting arrest by flight, let's see, and then reads what's called the indictment. Let's see, yeah. So then the judge will say, the statute upon which this charge is based reads as follows. A person is guilty if he, by flight, 1. Purposefully prevents or attempts to prevent a law enforcement officer from effecting an arrest, let's see, and or uses any other means to create a substantial risk of causing physical injury to the public servant or another. In order to convict the defendant of this charge, the state must prove, first, beyond a reasonable doubt, the defendant committed the basic offense of resisting arrest. The 4 elements of that offense are that the person was a law enforcement officer, that they were effecting an arrest, the defendant knew or had reason to know that the law enforcement officer was effecting an arrest. And, see, the court cites in the jury charges, State versus Simmons, where the court reversed a conviction for a 3rd degree resisting arrest because although the juror was told that elements had to be found in order for a defendant to be guilty of some crime, that is, resisting by flight or resisting by force, the jurors there were not made aware of the significance of its findings in the terms of seriousness. So the jury charges then were revised by the court and by the Supreme Court. So the judge then has to read additional instructions to the jurors. And what are the additional instructions that the judge must read? Let's see. That the defendant purposely prevented or attempted to prevent the officer from effecting the arrest. The first element of the state must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that there was a law enforcement officer. A law enforcement officer is a person whose public duties include the power to act as an officer for the detection, apprehension, arrest, and conviction of offenders against the laws of the state. Let's see. The second element the state must prove beyond a reasonable doubt is that the officer was effecting an arrest. It is not a defense to a prosecution under this subsection that the law enforcement officer was acting unlawfully in making the arrest, provided that they were acting under their official authority and provided the law enforcement officer announces his intention to arrest prior to the resistance. The third element that the state must prove beyond a reasonable doubt is that the defendant knew or had reason to know that the law enforcement officer effecting an arrest. A person acts knowingly with respect to the nature of his conduct or the intended circumstances if aware that their conduct is of that nature, or that such circumstances exist, or he is aware of the high probability of their existence. A person acts knowingly with respect to the result of their conduct if they're aware that it is practically certain that their conduct will cause a result. Knowing with knowledge are equivalent terms having the same meaning. The fourth element the state must prove beyond a reasonable doubt is the defendant purposely prevented or attempted to prevent the arrest. A person acts purposefully with respect to the nature of their conduct or a result of the conduct if the conscious object of the conduct would cause such a result. That is, a person acts purposely if he means to act in a certain way or cause a certain result. A person acts purposely with respect to the intended circumstances if they are aware of such possible arrest. Now, purpose and knowledge are conditions of the mind which cannot be seen and can only be determined by inference from conduct, words, or acts. A state of mind is rarely susceptible of direct proof, but must ordinarily be inferred from the facts. Therefore, it is not necessary that the state produce witnesses to testify that the accused said that they had a certain state of mind when they engaged in a particular act. It is within the juror's power to find that such proof has been furnished beyond a reasonable doubt by inference which may arise from the nature of his acts and his conduct, and from all that's said and that what was done at a particular place and from the surrounding circumstances. The judge then instructs, if the jurors find the state has failed to prove any one of these elements beyond a reasonable doubt, then they should find the defendant not guilty. Now, let's say the defendant denies flight. Let's see. Then there's an additional instruction, and that is, if to the jurors, if you find the state has proven the basic offense of resisting arrest beyond a reasonable doubt, the jurors must continue their deliberation and consider whether the state has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant committed the more serious offense of resisting arrest by act of flight. If the defendant denies flight or denies the acts that constitute flight, mere departure from a place where a crime has been committed does not constitute flight. The state must prove beyond a reasonable doubt the defendant, fearing that he would be arrested, fled for the purpose of evading arrest. Now, it also has to be for the purpose, it says right here, of a crime. Let's see. If the jurors find the state has proven the basic offense of resisting arrest beyond a reasonable doubt, then the jurors have to determine whether or not the flight portion is applicable. It's basically not automatic that running away is a crime. Now, the state has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, fearing that they would be arrested, fled for the purpose of evading that arrest. Therefore, if the jurors find the state has proven the elements beyond a reasonable doubt, then they have to find the defendant guilty of resisting arrest by flight. If the state has failed to prove the fifth element, then they have to find the defendant guilty of only basic offense of resisting arrest. And that makes it, important for the judge to do the correct jury charges. For other information on resisting arrest, visit website njlaws.com. That's njlaws.com, or website benotguilty.com. That's benotguilty.com.